Hi there, and welcome to the Governor's Bill. It's a new show. Thank you for joining us. My name is Debbie Davis. I'm co-hosting here today with Bob Picone, the infamous. Today he's going to join me and our guest, which is Governor Paul LePage. Welcome.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for doing this.
Well, we are here today to talk about a governor's bill, which you've submitted. It is LD 1629. It's called an act to protect the elderly from tax lien foreclosures. And please listen up. This is a very important bit of information that you need to know about. What is LD 1629 about?
1629 is an effort on behalf of the governor's office to bring a bill that will help the elderly who have homes in the state, who own their home outright in the state of Maine, help them understand some of the risks that are out there and some of the remedies on how they can protect themselves. So it's a part of the bill will give them some information on what happens if they get into some trouble. But another part of the bill, which is the most important part, which has been stripped out by the Democrats, is to make sure that if a person or a family own a home, they're over 65, they own their home, they have no mortgage, and they have problems paying their taxes, that I am trying to pass a bill that would require the town, in the event they have to sell the property, to sell it at market value, take whatever taxes and fees and interest that is owed to town, and give the money, the rest of the money, back to the homeowners. Currently in state law, if you have a mortgage on your bank, that is the process. Mortgage on your house from a bank, I'm sorry. That is the process. However, if you own your home outright, you have no mortgage, and you get in trouble with your property taxes, the town can come in and take your entire property and you're thrown out on the streets.
Let me just read the 2 points that LD 1629 is designed to do. It would provide notification that the homeowner has the right to file an application for abatement and has the right to seek assistance through the state's Bureau of Consumer Protection. It would also require that if a homeowner who is 65 or older is foreclosed on, their property should be sold by an independent licensed broker at fair market value. That's
Correct.
Important.
That is the key, because right now what they do is they just sell it on a closed bid to their closest buddy, and that's really what can happen.
I hate to say it, but you know, you're right.
And the first on the first part of it, the Democrats put this language in there, but you can already do that. Most towns do that. So they were trying to do that and eliminate the second part of the bill. But it's so important to have if in the event your home has to be sold, it should be sold by an independent broker, and the town should only keep what is owed them and the rest of the money returned to you. And that's what this is all about.
Yep.
It's to protect the elderly. And for some reason, we're having this enormous battle over it, because quite frankly, when I introduced this bill a few months ago, I thought it was going to be a no-brainer that everybody would agree.
Right.
Unfortunately, because of the Maine Municipal Association, the Democrats are lockstep and barrel with the...
What is the... What's the term that I want to use? But what is the reason that the Maine Municipal Association seems to be so lockstep on this?
The only thing I heard them say, I've invited both the executive director and their lobbyists to debate it on a show like this. Let's go debate it on TV so everybody can hear both sides of the story. The only thing that I heard them say was, this is a big hammer they have over the heads of property owners, and they don't want to lose it.
The towns.
The towns, that's correct. This is what I call the nuclear option, and so they can take your house away anytime they wish.
And they've lost sight of the fact that they are there for the welfare of the town people.
This is where I am so upset with the Democratic Party, because they claim, and they go around claiming that they are
For the little people.
For the party of the people. And for the most part, they are. However, when they get into Augusta and behind closed doors, they never have been.
If you look at their policies, it clearly shows that they're not.
That they're not. And it really upsets me that they're willing to throw people out of their homes. And it's one thing to throw them out of their homes, but they're taking money that a person has worked their whole lives to pay for a home, to own it. And yes, they have a little financial trouble and they owe some taxes, fine. But if they have no mortgage on it, why are you throwing them out? You're going to get your taxes eventually,
Yeah.
because the home can't be sold without getting your money. In this particular bill, the town is kept whole, the real estate agent is going to get his commission, and the people, money's returned to the people.
The
There is
equity.
no reason not to support this bill.
Where is the logjam to prevent information such as that from getting out there to the public? Because I suspect strongly the large majority of people out there do not understand this process.
That's correct. And Wednesday, I think it was Wednesday this week, I was in Portland to an audience of 500 people, got a big applaud because of what we're trying to do. People did not understand. I have yet to see anybody, whether you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, Green, I don't care what party, once you understand what we're trying to do, I've had universal approval, with the exception if you're a town official or a member of the Maine Municipal Association. It's just incredible. The people once the people understand what we're trying to do, it's almost universally in favor of it. Why would you take something that doesn't belong to you?
Which,
Well, go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'd like to discuss how this came about. Tell me the story of how this came about.
This came about last year. I get a phone call from a lady from Massachusetts who says, I have a neighbor. I don't live in Maine, but I have a home in Maine. I'm a summer resident. I have a neighbor who's going to be thrown out of his house, and he's trying to get your help. So she brought him in, and when she did, it was Mr. Sukeforth, well into his 80s, and I said, let me see if we can help. I called Pine Tree Legal. They agreed to come in and help. The problem is the town had already gone so far. They had exercised the foreclosure. He was going to lose his house. This is a situation where the man and his wife have a home worth about $70,000 to $75,000. She had a stroke. She was bedridden. He was early stages of dementia. He's elderly. Taking a small pension, by the way, and a very small pension, and was buying either medicine and food, and couldn't pay his taxes. The only thing he owed on the house was $4,000 worth of taxes, and the interest and the fees from the town was up to $6,500. But they could have let him live there until he died, and they still would have got their money eventually. The point is, they threw him out. They took the house, sold it for what was owed against it to the abutter.
What a coincidence.
To the abutter, who happened to be a good friend of the selectmen,
Oh,
and Mr. and Mrs. Sukeforth were thrown out. Now,
In the middle of winter.
in the middle of winter with nothing. Now, fortunately, we were able to get Mrs. Sukeforth immediately into a nursing home. Mr. Sukeforth had to linger for a couple of months, couch surfing, until we were able to find him a place to go. It was just sinful. Now, the burden is, yes, this abutter got value of $75,000. The state inherited the responsibility for Mr. and Mrs. Sukeforth, which is it's appropriate. You don't
Right.
throw them out on the street. But $75,000 could have been available to help.
Yes, indeed. Ah, this is maddening. We have
This is
such...
Maine, state of Maine in the 21st century.
Yeah, I know. We have such an older population. This can't be the only case out there.
And there isn't. And since then, it happens maybe 4 or 5 times a year. Right now, I know of 2 others. One it happens to be a couple who the husband just passed away. They have a home. In this case, they have a little bit of a mortgage, so we have a friend with the banker, and they're going to help her sell the property. But here is a situation with the pension again. It was a catastrophe, a death. Because she was a school teacher, and he worked in the private sector and was in the Social Security system, she doesn't get survivor benefits because of what they call the offset. So her pension is too small for her to be able to stay in the house.
Oh.
So these are the type of things that we're trying to fix. In fact, I want to put a bill in before I leave. I don't know that the legislature would allow me, is to try to fix this problem. The reason there's an offset is because the way the Maine employee pension was set up years and years ago, it violates some of the IRS rules,
Oh,
and therefore we have an offset. If they fixed it, we wouldn't have the offset.
that would help.
And on the Mr. Suforth case, to add insult to injury, once we got involved, we realized that he was entitled to a much larger pension. Now we have his pension.
Oh,
So there was no need of he ever losing the house in the first place. But there was a lot of greed and people who just like to take things that aren't theirs.
okay, so your bill was put in front of the taxation committee?
That's
Is that
correct.
right? And who testified in support of your bill?
Oh my goodness, most of the, let's say that most anyone who works with elderly people in the state of Maine, with the exception of the AARP.
Really?
Yeah, the AARP were silent on this issue. And we've sent them a letter wondering why we haven't had a response yet. And the other group was the Maine Municipal Association, which really sort of is a very, very powerful lobby in Maine. The two most powerful lobbies, Maine Municipal Association and the Teachers Union. They're pretty strong. They testified against it. The way it stands, they've had several votes. They keep bringing it back because I have been working tirelessly trying to get the legislature to recognize that the right thing to do here is to pass this bill.
Well, they should pass it as is. They
It should
shouldn't be
pass
watering
as
it
is,
down.
and they're trying to water it down. So
What is their voice opposition to it? I mean, what do they give as the voice? I realize that there may be opposition that they're silent on. They don't want to get it out there. But what is the reason that they're voicing as to why they will?
Well, the Maine Municipal Association said that the only leverage they have over homeowners is the threat of taking their home. And they don't care whether they're old or young or the house is paid for or not. They don't care. They just don't want to lose that hammer. And this is what they're representing to the legislature on behalf of the towns. They completely ignore the circumstances involved with individual cases, and they completely ignore the fact there is no mortgage on the property. They could get a reverse mortgage, they could get a conventional mortgage, they could get an abatement, but they don't want to be involved in doing any of that.
They just want to take the property and move on.
Yep.
This could be you. This could be me. This could be any of us in this state.
I'm over 65. It definitely could be me. And if a certain party would take my house in that's 10 seconds.
Come towards the end of this month, I'll be over 65.
Jeez. Oh, we're laughing, but this is a serious issue.
It is very, very serious.
And what makes it so serious that you don't hear anything about it.
No.
Never hear any press about it.
You don't
this is-
hear any stories of
Yes, I mean,
people
one would
losing
think
their
that
homes.
this would be a great human interest story.
There is only one reporter in the state of Maine that has been on this really, she's been on this like a hound dog. She has written several stories, but the only paper it gets into is the Waterville Sentinel. She's a reporter, Amy Calder, with the Waterville Sentinel. She's been writing on it. She's been on this case with the Suforths from the very beginning. Unfortunately, despite the Portland Press Herald and Lewiston, and they're all owned by the same owner.
Yeah, they are.
It doesn't get into the newspaper except the
Imagine
Waterville.
that.
I would like, if you'd like, I can get the name of that reporter, and I would love to have
Bring
the
her
reporter
on.
come on my show,
Yeah.
I would do that in a
and
heartbeat.
we could do
That
a
would be
joint
great.
show.
That would be
and
great to help
to
spread
follow
the
up
word.
to follow up on this because
She-
this is serious stuff.
She is really, really, she's done multiple stories on it. She's been to the hearings. She's been at the hearings and she's been there all along. She is fighting this just as hard as I am. And I'd be more than happy to give you her name and number.
That's fabulous. Okay, now during your testimony on LD 1629, everybody, Senator Justin Chenette asked you a question about senior housing bonds.
Correct.
Now, I've never heard that term before. What are senior housing bonds?
This is, I'm glad you asked that, and I will tell you, he is not doing a good, he's not representing the elderly of the state of Maine very well. I'll say
Okay.
that right off the bat. The senior housing bond is a bond that was sold about 4 years ago now. And what it says is the taxpayers of the state of Maine are going to sell $15 million of bonds, and they're going to give the proceeds to a developer who's going to build senior housing. And that's it. The problem with that is I'm going to write, and two legislators came in 4 days after the referendum. Two legislators both came in asking for $5 million each out of this bond, because you know where I'm going with it. I'm going to give them $5 million. They're going to go build elderly housing, but there's no restriction. They can charge anything they want for rents. I make them millionaires overnight, and there's no control over it. That's why I refuse to sell it. I just simply asked the legislature, why don't we tweak it a little bit? Let's fix it, and then I'd be more than happy to sell it. For instance, why don't we use, they allow $500,000 of the $15 million to go into fixing things for mobility issues within a home.
Right.
If we're interested in keeping people in their homes, why don't we make it $5 million? And go in and put ramps and
So that they can stay in
so
their
they
homes.
can stay in their homes a lot longer. Widen the doors so they can get their wheelchairs through. That's what I think the elderly need. And if you're going to give money away to people overnight, why don't you put a control on the rent so they can't charge them their whole pension to stay in this apartment? So this is what I was objecting to.
Wow.
And they go out and they say the governor's against housing bonds. I'm not against housing bonds. I'm against making certain people wealthy overnight.
Yes, yes.
Who do you think is responsible for that misstatement? Is it the media, or is it
could be
the
anybody.
politician?
It's both. In this particular case, this bond was sponsored by Mark Eves when he was when he was a speaker and working down south, and the newspapers. Well, if you read newspapers since 2011, I haven't had a very good
Not a good
reputation.
relationship with Mark Eves.
Gee, I would have never
Or
known.
with the newspapers.
Or with the newspaper, that's correct.
I mean, you can tell a newspaper's article without reading it. You can tell if it's positive or negative by the picture they use.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
This
Oh,
is
yeah.
so true. Oh my gosh. Well, I agree with what you say in regard to the senior housing bonds. If that's how they operate, they need to be tweaked. They need
Oh
to
my,
be
I'd
changed.
sell them tomorrow morning if they would allow the ability to control the rent, and so we can put a number on the rent so they can't just be anything. And if the taxpayer is going to pay for the bond, we should make sure that the elderly are well taken care of.
Well, it is called senior housing bond.
That's exactly what
I
it's
mean-
called. And it's supposed to be for seniors, but the point is it doesn't tell them how much you're going to charge them. I'd like to make sure
Yeah.
they can afford to live there.
Exactly.
And I think that the person who inherits this money, like one of the projects that came up was $5.2 million project, okay? It was a housing project. It's going to cost $5.2 million. I was asked to give him $5 million of that.
Oh, boy.
You
Okay.
see where I'm coming
A little
from here?
lopsided here.
A little bit on the
Just a
shady
little,
side.
little heavy there.
So
And of course I said no.
on a $5.2 million bond, they have 0.2.
The project was
million
5.2.
that's their investment. The rest they
200,000.
get. The rest they want to get from the state.
Exactly.
They put 200,000 in it, and I give them $5 million, and that's the project.
Wow.
And I said no.
I'm in the wrong business.
We're all
You and
in
I
the
both.
What is the status of this bill right now? It's just waiting in committee?
This
Again,
could-
being voted on and
Right.
voted on?
There's a
or-
lot of discussions. They vote on it, and it goes down party lines. Right now, it's party lines.
Yeah.
And they're trying to. What happens in committee? At one time they almost had it twisted over. I think they had it. It was going to be like 11-1 or maybe 12-1 or something. One Republican stayed tough, and the others were given a song and dance, and they sort of believed it until we got wind of what they did. We went back, talked to them. They reconsidered it, and now it's back to party lines again. This is a bill that I honestly believe that it's not about Democrat, it's not about Republican.
right.
It's about Grammy and Grampy. Do we want to keep our elders in their homes for as long as possible? I believe that's what this bill's about, and that's what we should be working for.
I totally
I
agree.
remember I was part of the group that did the tax credit renovation.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that was the whole drive. Keep people in their home. Keep them out of the
people in their
nursing
homes.
home at the state's expense. Keep the people in their own home, in their own neighborhood,
Yeah.
with their own friends.
And they live
Like-
longer and they're healthier.
That's right.
I'll give
And
you-
they're also more productive.
And let me give you a scenario that happened a few years ago. It was mind-boggling. Lady's 86 years old. She's living alone. They decide she's not healthy enough to live alone anymore. They put her in a nursing home. Everything's good. They take the house, they sell it, take the car, sell all the asset to use it to keep her in a nursing home. Everything's good so far. Now she's 93 years old, and she's too healthy to qualify for nursing home.
What?
So they want her to leave.
You're kidding me.
No, because the law says you have to be you have to need the nursing home.
You couldn't
Oh,
write a book
sure.
about that.
So now she tells me, she says, they took my house, they took my car, I have nothing, and they want me to leave the nursing home. I said, you stay right here, we'll figure it out. And so
Oh
she's still
my
in the nursing home.
Goodness.
You could
Wow.
not write a book.
I know, this is incredible. It is really incredible. But this is what happens when a society doesn't pay attention to what their legislators are doing.
Oh, yes, so true. And,
And
we're
I
all
would-
so busy today.
I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
Go right ahead.
I would say it goes beyond the state.
Oh, absolutely.
It goes beyond the state. And in conversations that I have with friends and acquaintances on a regular and routine basis, that's a very similar point is made.
It's national.
They've turned
you
us,
know, I
they've turned
speak
our
to other
society
governors.
upside down.
Yep. I speak to governors all the time, and every governor has similar issues in their communities. You know, the problem now is newspapers will say you got Republicans, Democrats, and you know the pro business and pro people. It's totally wrong. Most people, and I would say most people that are elected, go to Augusta or to any state capital or Washington with good intentions.
I agree with that.
There's a smaller group that aren't there for the right reason, and they sort of
Strong arm.
corrupt the rest of the system.
They strong arm the newbies.
And that's right now, on the way down here, I got a phone call to make a call to a couple of Republicans because they're starting to weaken under the pressure of the solar bill.
Oh, gee.
Now, the solar's fine. I don't have a problem with solar. What I have a problem with is charging everybody a surcharge so we can give subsidies for people to put solar panels on their roofs, and they already have another system in their home, but the people that are paying for it can only afford whatever they have.
Right.
So if you go, and the best example I can give you is you go by a trailer park. Most of the homes in a trailer park are going to be heating their homes with oil.
Right.
They can't afford the solar panel,
No.
but they're paying for it. And that's my objection. Let them do solar, but if you want solar, pay for it. Don't have the rest of the people pay for it.
We're paying for everything else as
We
it
are.
is.
We are. Our food is expensive. Our fuels are expensive. This winter has been a cold winter.
Sure.
We had a high price of heating fuel. We have no ability to get natural gas through Massachusetts or New York because they won't let us through.
Yeah.
We can't get it from Canada because it's a foreign country. The only place we have is the ocean. And then when I say ocean, everybody goes crazy.
Yeah.
But I got to heat the homes.
Yes. Yes.
Well, arguably, you could say that everybody's crazy already.
Yeah, arguably, that's correct.
Now, there's still time, isn't there, for the public to get involved?
This is why, yes, and this is why we're here today. This is very, very important for our elderly people, and I'm asking every citizen in Maine to call their legislator and their senator and just ask them, this is not about Democrat or Republican or the Maine Municipal Association. This is about Grammy and Grampy.
That's right.
Help them stay in their homes. Please tell them to vote for this bill. And I don't often make this, go out, it's every day this week. We are going out and speaking to groups and anyone that will listen because I feel so passionate about this. This is just wrong for Mr. and Mrs. Sukforth to be thrown out of their home, and I'm trying to prevent it from happening again.
Yeah.
I would just make the clarification and say that make sure you call your state representative and your state
Yes.
senator.
Your state representative, your state senators, and ask them to please support this bill. This is a state of Maine bill.
We'll have a list of the members of the Taxation Committee rolling on the screen as well, so that you can get contact information from them as well, and give them a call. Or send them an email. Let them know you need LD 1629 passed as originally presented by the governor, with no waters down, nothing erased from it. We need it intact.
It's just a very simple bill that says if you're having a hard time with your taxes, you're elderly, we're going to help you. That's
Exactly.
really what it's doing. And we're not going to throw you out in the snowbank.
And it's in the middle of winter in Maine. Exactly.
It's beyond belief.
I
It
know.
is.
It really is beyond.
And you would not think that I have to run around the state
And
every
what's,
day.
one of the things that makes it even worse is that you never hear about it.
I know.
It's a silent chicanery.
Well, I imagine if it was happening to me, I wouldn't want to tell anybody, oh, the town's going to
I
take
think
my
what he's
house.
saying, though, is the press has been very silent on this.
That's
the
right.
AARP's been silent on it.
And I'm
You
surprised
know,
at that.
the Organization for the Aging are all over it. I mean, they're helping us. But their resources are limited as well. The legal firms that help the elderly, the law firms and the legal organizations that help the elderly are all over it. They're big supporters. Like I said earlier, the only people against this in committee were the Maine Municipal Association, and the AARP has been silent. And that concerns me a great deal because they should be representing the elderly.
Yeah, I totally agree. We have a statement from Frank Alessandro of Pine Tree Legal Assistance talking about the current foreclosure process in a town. There's no court hearing. The town takes the home and its entire value, whether the home is worth $50,000 or $150,000.
That's correct.
Regardless of the taxes owed, the town can then legally keep any amount that the house sells for, regardless of how much is owed in taxes. And this is true if the homeowner owes $200 or $2,000 in back taxes.
So if I own a home and I owe $10,000 in back taxes, but the home is worth $150,000, they can take that home, sell it for $150,000, and keep the $150,000, and I get nothing out of it.
That's
That is
correct.
correct.
That's current.
In the state of Maine,
law.
that is current law, and that's what we're trying to change. That's exactly the best way to explain it.
Very rarely do I say anything exactly right.
That is absolutely perfect. And that's what the problem is with this law.
And in this bill, the change would be that after the house is sold, the town would get their money that's owed, but the rest would go
back to the owners.
the owners.
To take this example here, if you owed $10,000 in back taxes and the house is worth $150,000, the house is sold for $150,000, the town would get the $10,000 and then maybe any real estate broker's fees that would
Right.
come out, and the balance of the money would go to the owners.
Yep. And that's the
what
way it should be.
And it's their equity. They've worked their whole lives to earn it and own it. And the catch-all here, and the thing that is so striking, is if you don't owe any mortgage, you have no mortgage on your home, you're in this pickle. But if you have a mortgage on your home, your banker will be your best friend and prevent
Right.
it from happening.
That's correct.
So, advice to the elderly is keep a little tiny mortgage on your house.
Don't sell it off so
bill
quickly.
if this bill doesn't
That's
pass,
your leverage.
that is your leverage. If this bill passes, we will take you will be protected.
Well, I have to thank you, Governor LePage, for picking up this ball and running with it. It's an important thing that needs change.
Oh, every year there's one or two bills like this that you really need. It's not about politics. You just have to do the right thing, and you go fight for it. If we can fix this bill this year, I think that we've done a good job this year. This bill alone will protect a lot of people.
Yeah.
We figure over a decade, it's 40 to 50 families go through this and they lose everything. It's just horrible. And one of the other arguments of one legislator made was, well, it doesn't happen enough, so we don't need to change the law.
Oh,
has
come
to happen.
on.
Now,
It
if it
shouldn't happen
happens
at all.
once,
It
it's
only
enough
has
to
to
change
happen
the law.
once.
And then, well, there's no excuse for not doing it because it's not a big burden if it doesn't happen much. But if it happens often, you're hurting a lot of people.
That's right. Well, thank you so much for coming on and
been a
talking with
pleasure.
us about this.
It's a pleasure. And I love what you're doing, the governor's bill, so in the future, I know where to come if I have a problem.
Exactly, exactly. Everybody, please make sure that you contact your state representatives and let them know that you want LD 1629 passed. It is an act to protect the elderly from tax lien foreclosures. There'll be some information rolling after the show right here on the screen. So join us next time for the governor's bill. Thank you to my co-host,
My
Bob
pleasure.
Chacon.
My pleasure.
We'll see you guys next time.